Okay, hello everyone. My name is Eric, and I'll be talking about how to notarize your merged 4D application in V18. So let's begin. This is me. I'm a technical service engineer at 4D. And let's begin. What is notarization? So notarization is the process of uploading your application to Apple's notary service to make sure your application does not contain any malicious code. You can think about this like if you were going to an airport, you would need to show some form of identification like your driver's license and passport, and there is that TSA check to make sure you're not carrying any harmful weapons. That TSA check is similar to the notary process of how Apple checks to make sure your app doesn't contain any points of weakness or any kind of malware. So what's the point of notarization? First thing, whenever you notarize an app, it grants the apps certain entitlements or access to other app services like the photos, contacts, calendars, and notes. You can deploy your application without any human interaction. And whenever you open an notarized app, it will show a very lovely message saying, "Do you want to open this app?" without any kind of warning. And that ultimately builds trust between the developers and the users. So here's what it would look like if you were to launch an unnotarized app. You'd be greeted with this message saying, Apple cannot check your app for any malicious software, and you cannot open it. And these are your only options to hit Show in Finder and OK. Now, our ultimate goal here is to notarize a standalone application, and we will get something like this. This lovely message saying, you download this app from the internet. Do you want to open it? And very straightforward, right? Now, in the weird scenario where you're unable to notarize an app, let's say Apple's notary service is down, the servers are down, there are still ways that a user can open an unnotarized app using forced launch. And there are two ways you can do this. The easiest way you can do it is using the right click or control click on the app, and then you hit open. Another way is to go into your system preferences, security and privacy, and there is an option for open anyway. So it will look something like this. Here is an example application. You can do a right click open. You'll be greeted with this message saying, it cannot be checked for malicious software, but you can still open it in this prompt. The second alternative is if you go into your privacy settings, hit open anyway, and you'll be greeted with that same message prompt saying, cannot check for malicious code, but you can still open it. Now, when does Gatekeeper actually check for an app that is notarized? And Gatekeeper is kind of like the security guard for macOS. The only scenario where it checks it is when you are running on macOS Catalina and you download an application from the internet. This includes HTTP, FTP, AirDrop, etc. And for all other scenarios, Gatekeeper will not check whether an app is notarized. So this includes when a user is running on macOS Mojave or older. If you copy the application on a thumb drive and you move it to another computer, it won't check it. Let's say you're in the same network, you copy an application from the network drive and move it to your local disk, it won't check it. And lastly, if you have an app that was installed on an older OS before Catalina, and then you upgrade it to Catalina, that app will still work, even if it's not notarized. Now, there are certain prerequisites you need to worry about before going through the whole notarization process. The first thing is to make sure that your Xcode is on the latest version. It should be on 10 or later. You should be on macOS Mojave or later in order to use certain terminal lines for notarization. You need to be enrolled in Apple's developer program through developer.apple.com. This is the program where you have to spend $99 a year, which would give you access to these Apple certificates, which you can use to code sign your application. Now, there's only two we really need to worry about in terms of 4D. The main certificate you will need is the developer ID application, which is used to sign your .app files. So this is whenever you have a merged standalone app or a client-server app, you will need the certificate. If you plan to archive your application in a .pkg file, make sure you have the developer ID installer in your keychain. Otherwise, all you really need is the developer ID application certificate. Next, whenever you log on to your Apple ID account, make sure that two-factor authentication is enabled whenever you log on to this account, as well as this app-specific password. And this app-specific password is used whenever you attempt to notarize your app and need to log in using your email and password. So let's say you go into apple.id.apple.com. You will see, similar to this home page here, make sure you check that two-factor authentication is enabled. And as well for app-specific password, you can hit generate password. It will show this new window here, and you can either copy and paste it to some notepad, but preferably we want to use this password whenever we notarize our app. And if anyone's worried of my showing my credentials for this email, this password was generated many months ago and I've already cleared it out, so no need to worry about that. Regarding the app-specific password, instead of typing that 19-character long password over and over again or copy and pasting, the easier way is to add that password to the keychain. That way, instead of typing that 19-character password, you can refer to it using the keychain name instead. So why don't we actually do that with a simple example? So let me exit out of here. And let's say I want to add a password. We can type security, add generic password, -a, and this is your Apple account email, -w, and this would be the app specific password. So I'll just type ABC123 for example, -s, and the keychain name. And I'm just going to call it test PW and hit enter. Oh, looks like there's already a test password. I'll just call it test password 2. Cool. And just to make sure that we can make sure that the password has been added for sure, we can use security, find generic password, -s, and the name of the keychain password that we called it. So we called it test PW2 -w, and this will show the actual password in plain text. Cool. So you would do this with the app-specific password that you got from appleid.apple.com. And once you have added it, you no longer need to type the long password over and over again. Instead, you would use something like this, @keychain, and the name of the password. So you would do something like this. And you will see this kind of syntax later on when we start notarizing our app. Alright, let's keep going here. So let's go through the actual process of notarizing a 4D application. There's really only 5 steps. First, you need to build and sign the app. You can either do this using the build application window built into 4D, or the build application command. You can archive the application using a zip file, DMG, or PKG file. The reason you need to do this is whenever you attempt to upload a .app file to Apple's notary service, it treats the .app file as a folder rather than an actual app. So we need to put it into something else beforehand. Once we upload that application, we will receive some kind of status saying success or fail. But if it's success, you can stable a ticket to the application and deploy it. And I'll go further into these steps, or go into more detail into these steps. So first, let's build and sign our application. So here, you are probably familiar with this build application screen. Now, the cool thing about V18 is that V18 signing feature has been updated to recursively sign everything from the inside out. to make sure that the signing hierarchy is maintained. So why don't we actually demo or kind of go along with the presentation on how to notarize the app. So I actually have a test application here. All it is just a list box with a button, and I can add some entities in it. So let's go ahead and build this application. I'll be building a standalone application. Let's make sure it's in the V18 folder. And this is my certificate. Everything looks good. Let's go ahead and build it. So we'll let that run for probably a couple of seconds or so. Give it one moment here. Should be done. Here we go. No need for a log file. Let's go ahead and make sure it's in there. Check my Finder. So here's our final application folder, and here's our test. So the build went successful. Now what's the next step? Also, you can use the build application command. If you do this, make sure in the XML file or the 40 settings file to include your Mac certificate. And you should be using the developer ID application certificate. Cool. So now let's make sure, this is kind of an optional step, but to make sure everything goes well, let's make sure that the app was signed properly. If it was, we will get the output, sample the app accepted, and the source is developer ID. And how we can do this is using the command sbctl av sample and the name of the app, or path to the app. So let me quickly navigate to that directory. So now let's use that command sbctl -av and the path to the app, which is notary test.app. Cool. So because it was accepted by Gatekeeper, source is developer ID, that app was signed properly. So let's keep going. The next thing we need to do is to archive the app. You can either use, again, you can use a zip file, a DMG, or a PKG file, but typically we recommend using a DMG because it's a bit safer. So here's a command if you want to zip it. So let's hop into the DMG here. And the reason I'm showing only terminal commands is if you plan to put this in some kind of script, you can use these terminal commands for later and kind of automate the process further down the line. But for this presentation, I'll be demoing each step manually just to get a feel of what it's like to notarize an application from scratch. So let's go ahead and put this application in a DMG. You can use HDI util create -format udbz source folder. So the path to the app, we're in the current directory, so this is, we'll be putting the notary test.app in the DMG, and the name of the DMG, which I will call the same name, but .dmg. And this will take a little bit of time, maybe a couple minutes or so. So I'll let that run in the background. But also to make sure that you code sign the DMG as well, or else you might get some errors when you try to extract that file from the DMG. So I'll let that run in the background and we can continue. So this is the later step here. If you want to validate the signature for the DMG, you would use that command. And notice the output. It says rejected, but it's rejected because it is a unnotarized developer ID, which makes sense, right? Because we didn't notarize anything yet. All we've done is code sign the app and put it in the DMG, and we will code sign the DMG. So let me hop back and step here. It should be done by now. Still loading, but no big deal. It's almost done. We give that a little bit of a moment there. Again, make sure you use your developer ID application certificate to sign the DMG as well as the app. Okay, looks like it's been created, so let's go ahead and sign the DMG. So we use code sign -s and the name of the certificate. So I'll be going in my keychain, taking this name here, put some double quotes. And what is the thing we are signing? We are signing the notarytest.dmg. And now let's quickly validate everything so far. You don't really need to do this step, but I like to make sure everything goes well properly. So we can use spctl-a-t open context primary signature -v standing for verbose and the path to the DMG. Cool. Well, it's rejected, but it's rejected because it's not notarized. So this is exactly what we expected so far. So far, so good. Now, these are the terminal commands you would use for a PKG file, but since we're not doing this for this example, I will kind of move on ahead. Also, you can use this to check your PKG file. And now the actual part, the meat of the presentation, is uploading to the notary service. So why don't we do that? So here we'll be using the command xcrun alt tool notarize app primary bundle ID. And the primary bundle ID is a ID that you give the app. Typically the convention is com.company name dot app name. So I'm just going to call it com.40.test. Also make sure that there are no underscores because it will get rejected based on the name. And make sure that the primary bundle ID does not start with a number. Just keep it simple. So I'll name it com.40.test. My username is the email, password, and because we actually added that our app specific password to our keychain, we can refer it to as @keychain : and the name of the keychain password. So I actually named it alt tool -f and the path to the file. The file is the DMG, so we'll be uploading notarytest.dmg. And let's run that. So based on the size of your application and your network upload speed, this may take a little bit of time. I'm going to let it run in the background while we continue. But if everything goes well with the upload, you should see something like this below in the output saying no errors uploading this application. And you'll receive this request UUID. Every application you upload will have its own request UUID, which you can use to check the notary status for later. So, while it's still uploading, oh, it's actually done, perfect timing. So what we can do is check the notary status. How we do that is using the command xcrun alt tool notarization info. I'm going to paste the UUID there. -u, which is the email. -p, which is the keychain that you have added. And it's still in progress. So this may take roughly 5 to 10 minutes. So I'm just going to let that run in the background for a little bit while it's in progress. But let's say let's go on here. Okay. So let's say we forgot the UUID. We close the terminal. Uh-oh, where is the UUID? I can't find it. How can I get it back? So what you can also do is check the notarization history. And how you can do that is using this command, xcrun alt tool -- notarization history 0 for page 0. The username is @40.com and the password. So this will give us a whole list of all the applications we have ever uploaded on this account. So on the top is the most recent. This is the one we just uploaded. It's still in progress of notarizing. And the previous one was a application I uploaded yesterday. So let's see what would happen if we check the status of something that failed, right? Because things never go our way sometimes. Let's go ahead and check the status for a application that failed to notarize. So how we can do that is using, that's not it, it's right here. So we can use xcrun alt tool, notarization info, request UUID, your username, and the password. And you would get something like this. You would get the date, and the most important part is the log file URL, which gives you kind of a JSON data of everything that worked and everything that failed. So if we hold Command and click it, you can actually see here all of the issues that happened. It was invalid, and the reason was that there was a plugin that was not signed properly. And this is how you will go about troubleshooting your issues. Luckily, this instance only had one issue, and this will kind of vary depending on the complexity of your application. If you have many plugins or bundles, let's say 32-bit applications that might not run properly, you might get a few more errors in there. And in terms of the notarization time, there have been instances where I uploaded an application for notarization and it took over an hour for something roughly 500 megabytes. The reason for this is that sometimes Apple's notary service is actually down. So one way you can check it is to go to apple.com/support/system status. And you can see all the services that are running. We are only care about, actually, this is not the right site. It should be Apple Developer. Let's go to Developer Apple System Status. So this is the one we care about here. The Developer ID Notary Service. If your application is taking a very long time to notarize, make sure you go to this website here and check for this service. It's very rare that it's down, but it may happen. So let's continue here. This is what a success would look like. This is what it would look like if an app was invalid for notarization. You can see from the status message. This is the command that you would use, as we've already shown, to check your notarization history. You would see something like this. Yep. Go to this website to check for any outages. And stapling. So what is the whole point of a ticket? So whenever you notarize an app, there is a ticket that is generated for that application stored somewhere online. And instead of having Gatekeeper check for an application whether an app is notarized online, you can actually staple the ticket directly to the app itself. So in the rare instances where users are running your application without internet, Gatekeeper can simply check the ticket that is stapled directly to the application itself without looking on the internet. So how you do that is using the command stapler, staple, and the path to the file. So why don't we go ahead and do that. I still don't know if my application was done uploading yet or done validating notarization. So let's check that real quick. Again, that's xcrun alt tool -- notarization info, the UUID, the username, and the password. Cool. So it is actually approved. You can check to make sure everything's going well. These are the ticket contents, and there are no issues. Great. So now let's go ahead and staple that ticket. Let's navigate to the directory. Go into the final application. And that's the DMG that we have uploaded. So we can use stapler, staple, and the DMG. So we are stapling the ticket to the DMG. And that is it. Everything processed correctly. The staple and validate action worked. Let's say you're the user that just downloaded the DMG from the internet and you want to make sure that there's a staple on it. If you want to validate the staple, you can do stapler, validate, and the path to the app. The validate action worked. So now at this point you are ready to deploy. But before we actually go to the whole deployment, we need to make sure that the application actually works after notarization, just to be 100% sure. So what we can do is, what I've actually done is I've kind of pre-uploaded this DMG to an FTP. So I can show you what that looks like here. Let me get rid of the old one real quick. And let's actually download something from FTP. So I'm going to download this. It'll take a few seconds here. And now we will open the DMG up. And you can kind of see what message we get when we try to open a notarized application. We'll give it a little bit of a moment here. Also, if you need a little bit more resources, you can go to the 40 blog. There is a whole documentation link for resolving common notarization issues. There's a signing, and I also made a tech tip regarding all the terminal commands you would use to notarize your app all on one page, so you don't need to jump around between different websites too often. Okay, so let's go ahead and put this in our applications folder. Should take less than a minute there. And this, this video was a little bit long in terms of going through each step of notarization, but down the line you can definitely automate this process by creating a simple script file and put all these command lines into that script file and execute everything within just one line. That way you don't have to do each step line by line, and it takes a long time. So I do recommend automating this process. I've actually created a tech note on how to automate this entire process. So feel free to head on kb.40.com and view that. Alright, so let's go ahead and launch our notarized app. Awesome, so look at this. You've downloaded this file, Apple checked it for malicious software and none was detected. So that's great, this is exactly what we expected. Let's make sure it works. Creates a dev file, so we can just put one in let's put it in the downloads folder for now. And here's our app. We can create some records, that's all it really does. And everything is perfect. So that is it for notarization. Here's just a kind of a document list if you need to reference for later. And you are ready to deploy your 40 application. Thank you very much.